Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on when and where are you listening to us today. And welcome to this conversation about advocating for global competencies and global citizenship. My name is Andres, and I am part of the Global Up team at AFS International. And today I am joined by three wonderful ambassadors, Patricia, Delton, and Ruth. And I call them ambassadors because that is the role that they have fulfilled during the past weeks as ambassadors of the 27th Youth Assembly, which took place this past month in New York City. The Youth Assembly gathered more than 500 young global citizens aspiring to reshape the world and take important actions towards the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. We focused on four core areas where there are urgent current challenges and exciting potential for young people to take action, like youth, global health, global citizenship, technology, and inclusion. So I'm really happy to have you guys here today with me in this conversation. And I would like to start with Patricia. Patricia, tell us, what's the role of an ambassador and how are you today?
Good morning, Andres and everyone. I'm doing fine, and I hope you're all doing great as well. So the role of the ambassador is basically the representative of your country at the Youth Assembly. So as the ambassador, you are there to promote the Youth Assembly and participate at all these workshops and also collaborate with other ambassadors. And you are the face of your country at the Youth Assembly, and you have a wonderful delegation, that you could bring as well with you. So everybody there, is working together with other ambassadors, learning about youth issues, sharing ideas, sharing projects and everything. So the role of the ambassador is it's hard to give a big description of it, but it's just representing your nation at this wonderful assembly.
I know that you are very passionate about diplomacy, right? And does that resonate with the role of a different type of ambassador, of an ambassador of your government, for example? Because I know that you have been working for the government of Canada, right?
Yes, that's correct. Yes. Yeah, so I guess to add to that, going to the Youth Assembly, this is my second time, but first time as an ambassador and previously as a delegate. So to compare it a little bit, with my work, the Youth Assembly was very eye-opening, and it was more like, when it's going to be like once I actually become like a actual Canadian ambassador, going somewhere and representing my nation, but then also having a team with me. So it's not just going to be myself representing one country, but have, people with me as well working together. So the Youth Assembly kind of gave me that short glimpse of what it would be like in the future for me, if that makes sense.
That's great to know. I hope that it really helped. Thank you. Thank you, Patricia. Delton, how are you today? I would like you to tell us a little bit about yourself and how was your journey to become a Youth Assembly ambassador?
Good morning, Andres, and good morning to my two colleagues, fellow ambassadors, and to everybody that's going to listen to this podcast. So I'm Delton Domah. I am an ambassador of the Youth Assembly from Liberia. I currently live in Virginia and I study at Towson University, where I do my graduate program in information assurance. That's more like a cybersecurity path. So in becoming an ambassador, I remembered this was my fourth Youth Assembly. So my first Youth Assembly I attended was in 2019, and that was in Washington, D.C. And I saw the Qatar delegation. It was the time Qatar brought the largest delegation to the Youth Assembly, and I was really inspired. And I told myself that, I will make sure and bring a huge Liberian delegation to the Youth Assembly. And I will see how best I can get more young Liberians and other young Africans who have not heard of the Youth Assembly to get involved. Because I was kind of like carried away by the different fascinating jobs that were done by young people in terms of making change in their communities, and also how they were excelling in their professional lives. And this community of change makers, how it just stood out for me. So I was like, this is something that I think if we had to change our world, if we have to build our communities, we have to get involved with platforms like this, where in young people mindset can be developed and they can have a different thinking as to how they can proceed about issues in the community. So that was it. So when I returned in my community, I started to engage a different group of young people from universities to advocates and, just a wide range of audiences where I can be able to share the message of the Youth Assembly and see their interest and help them in being a part of the Youth Assembly. So immediately that year, I applied to become a youth ambassador, but I wasn't accepted. But then I had an opportunity to partner with the Youth Assembly as a youth delegates head. So how that works is you're not an ambassador, but they give you the permission and discount codes to be able to take delegates to the Youth Assembly. So I did that in the winter edition of the 2020 Youth Assembly, which was held in February that year. And we were in New York together. Ruth was one of those people that came, luckily for me, and she's also an ambassador today. So yes, so we were able to, after the 2020 and also at the 2020 Youth Assembly, Ruth and myself had the opportunity to volunteer with the Youth Assembly. So after that time, I was reluctant to put in an application again, but a friend of mine, Samuel, told me like, man, you don't have to give up. Just put in another application and give it a try. So I was able to do that. And luckily for me, I went through the interview process and I came up as one of the ambassadors. And this is my second time serving. So that has been my journey.
It's a wonderful journey. And do you think it was successful? Because we saw that the Liberian delegation this year and it was big.
Yes. I mean, it worked, just my height of perseverance and my ability to have listened to my friend. And as well as, have, recognizing the fact that I wasn't trying to be an ambassador just for the name or so, but I wanted to create awareness of this platform to more young people in my community so that they can take advantage of build their own network, because I could go to the Youth Assembly and build a relationship with somebody who is in the tech industry, but I'm not passionate about health or I'm not passionate about other issues in our community. I could be somebody, I could bring another delegate who is also into the medical field and somebody else who is doing economy, and they can build network with different people that are from different sectors. And when we go back into our community with all these different networks and relationships that we build, we can be able to establish something in our community that can lead to sustainable change. So it was my ideal goal that, as I bring different young people from different professional backgrounds to the Youth Assembly, they too can be able to build their own network, and we all can bring it back into the Liberian community and create change.
Well, you're giving me a really good piece of information so I can introduce Ruth, because you were mentioning different professions and different fields of expertise, right? You don't have to be passionate only about, let's say, sustainability to be part of the Youth Assembly. So Ruth, you are, as you said yourself, an Afro fashion enthusiast, an entrepreneur. So what is that like? What do you do?
Thank you, Andres. It's wonderful to also be here too with my fellow colleagues. When I hear or when I say the word Afro fashion enthusiast, it encompasses representation for me. And this was just me, a little girl who will love, the African fabrics, and I will collect them when I was little. After school, I would pass to the tailoring shops and go home and, try to make something, be creative with it. But a typical African child, especially a female child in an African setting, would not, come from school and go do all of those things. She should be doing house chores and she should be, helping her mom. So it was a struggle navigating that with my mom because she will always think that, it's wasteful. I shouldn't be doing stuff like that. She come from school, help her cook, help her do some house chores and things like that. But for me, it was just, something that I was doing for fun until, I started to grow up and it became a passion for me. And I didn't realize that it was actually a problem. And the problem is, a lot of us Africans, we wear these things, we wear our fabrics, we wear, things from our culture, but it's wearing away. And these things don't necessarily come from our country. There are people in other countries because they have the sophistication, they have the great equipments and machineries. They copy the African prints and send it back to Africa and we buy it from them. So it's like we have the resources, but we're not utilizing, we're not making money from the resources, we're not enjoying the benefits of the resources. We have to buy from them because we don't have the industrial equipments, we don't have all of the machineries. But for me, I didn't just want to go into like the whole African fashion because I saw there are a lot of people who are doing fabrics in Liberia specifically. So I wanted to do something unique and stemming from the fact that, I came from a home and it was similar to most homes in Liberia, specifically that, an African child should be in a home to do house chores. I wanted to create something unique and I developed a home decor business. So it's basically using the African fabrics with that of Western cloth, like an infusion to create home decors. For me, it meant representation. So you don't want to say you're an African if you just have the African fabrics on, but when you go home, what does home means for you? How can people could be able to see that aesthetics in your home and feel like, yeah, this represents who you are or where you come from before, without you saying it aloud. So that was the whole, scenario of how it played. Because for me at that time, home meant just being able to be creative in my own space. And though it was not the typical definition of what home meant to an African mother and a girl child, it meant, being creative. So that's how I came up with the whole idea of creating African fabrics. But then because I started to learn about globalization, started to learn about diversity and inclusivity, and just like the same thing that we're talking about in the global competence class. So it's like you're infusing different culture, but we still have our representation there. So because people could easily relate to Western trends, there are a lot of Liberians in Liberia that use home decors that come from Westernized countries. They don't see African home decors like that. It's not affordable, it's not accessible to them. So that was my whole idea. Well, I can change this, but more to that, it began to grow. We're just a year old. I own a business in Liberia, and it's been a struggle, being in the US and trying to manage that, but it's becoming more of a social enterprise. So I was like, it's not just about creating these things and making it accessible to people. I want to tell my story. And to be able to tell my story, I want to give hope to other young girls like me who, they have the passion to spark up something like this creative brand that I'm building. So what we do, we train other young girls. We train them with arts and craft skills, so they learn how to make things with their hands that are home accessories too as well. But how that process is, and it's like when you're passionate about something and everything just starts to click from one point to another, and basically with the work that you do. So the whole idea was coming, but I didn't know it was tied to the sustainable development goals. So the way we do that is aside from just buying the fabrics from we buy the fabrics from local artisans, because local artisans, they face rivalry with Western imports, because there are small businesses, they just know it with their hands. It's not that big, so they just do it in small portions. They don't have a lot of customers because everybody access to Western imports, they're trendy, they're fashionable. So these people in Liberia, these local artisans and craftsmen, they don't make much. So we said, no, we will partner with them. We will buy from them. And then we will be able to make these things and sell it to other people. So that way we are empowering them economically, their revenue streams are going up. We are promoting what they do too as well. And then we say, okay, but then, we make these things, But then we noticed that there are leftover fabrics, in the tailoring shop. They use it and then they throw it away. They don't do nothing with it. And it was like, since we're training these girls, we can make use of these leftover fabrics. So that ties to environmental sustainability too as well. So we collect these leftover fabric, make crafty things with it, like rugs. We make rugs with pieces of cloth, African fabrics. We make diamond bags, like decors for the living room and things like that. So not only we are just creating representation, we are making home decors for Africans to feel represented. We're empowering local artisans, and we are telling the stories of other girls, because we believe that if they are trained with these skills, though not all of them can get the formal education, when they are trained with these skills, they are independent women in the society. They can make, sustainable incomes too as well. So that's the whole ideology of it.
I love it. And you're mentioning things that are so relatable, because you mentioned really well that you realize how these was connected to the Sustainable Development Goals as well. And you also mentioned the think about what is home to you, right? And I think that when we talk about global competencies, we talk a lot about cultural identity. And if we think about, for example, the cultural iceberg, right, the invisible and invisible components of a culture, if I wouldn't have the chance to hear from you what you do and what it means to you, I wouldn't be able to understand the invisible aspects of your culture and what is home to you, and why the representation, the symbolism, and even the fabrics of your country and your culture tell so much about yourself, and why you're so passionate about that. Right. And that's my next question, because as ambassadors, you defend causes and you are passionate about certain topics. And we just heard from Ruth what she's passionate about. Patricia, what are you passionate about? What's the cause that you defend?
Many things, I guess, but the main thing is seeing more youth in leadership positions. So it really doesn't matter what leadership position it is, but we do need to see a lot of younger people, get involved in lots of things, let's say in politics, in government, in diplomacy, or, social justice issues, gender issues, anything. So in this conference, I saw a lot of people, like Delton mentioned, everybody who attended the conference comes from different backgrounds in school. So not everybody is passionate about one specific thing. It's about multiple things. So my passion is definitely to see more younger people, evolve and grow in whatever thing they want to do, and also to not give up, because they're the future generation. I know I sound very old saying that, but I do want to see the next 10, 20 years more younger faces in a lot of different leadership positions.
Love it. That's great to know. I love that that's a youth assembly about. I think that the intergenerational dialogue was a big topic of conversation during the youth assembly. But yes, seeing more young people representing and having power, right, to make decisions and represent other people, not only young people, is very important. Delton, what are you passionate about? What are the causes that you defend?
All right, so just as Patricia and most young people, I would say that I'm passionate about so many things as a young person, but I've come to the realization that as an individual, I cannot change all of those things. That's why, for the most part, I try to utilize the SDG that talks about partnership, to work with young people from different backgrounds to see how best I can tap into what they already have to create impact in that area. So personally for me, while my education and professional background might be from tech, I'm also looking forward to seeing how best we can improve on youth development, especially like in my country. I'm from a country that went through like 15 years civil crisis, and not much has been done in terms of building human capacity and seeing how best young people are given the opportunity to leverage their skills in professional settings and in leadership role as well. So I feel like I have a huge project ahead. I have some major stake ahead wherein I have to ensure that young people get the right knowledge. They are enrolled in the right programs that can build their capacity so that they too can be able to contribute to the rebuilding process of our country. Because if we, for instance, are talking about building local road networks, the federal roads and all of that in the country, in order for us to have feeder roads built across the country, you must have citizens involved. If we're talking about building a better healthcare system, we should have young Liberians who have gone to medical schools and are willing to contribute and make sacrifices to ensure that the health sector is rebuilt. If we're talking about having a vibrant education system that provide quality education to the next generation and to ourselves, we have to ensure that our young people are learning in the right environment, they have the right resources, and they are picking up along with all the young people around the world and learning on the same path so that they can think of innovation, they can think of creativity, they can think of ways that they can help in minimizing some of the problems that we have in the education system and the nation as a whole. So I have a huge passion for human capacity building, for youth empowerment and development, because I feel that with those knowledge and with everything that young people are going to be empowered, not just with education, because most of the, when we talk about youth empowerment, when we talk about human capacity building, most of the people would think of, okay, it's all about education. But also the hard skills, the soft skills that people would need to live effectively and make meaningful impact are very essential to the community. So there are different ways. It could be through vocational education, it could be through formal education, it could be through conferences like the Youth Assembly, and so many other different programs that people can go to listen to different professionals from different backgrounds and be able to tap into these people's knowledge and build on their own and see how best they can become meaningful citizens to the society and lead their own change. So that's it.
It's a very multidisciplinary approach, right? And I really like the way that you explain the importance of having everyone involved, leaving no one behind, and mentioning all the different areas. And it already shows me a little bit of your cultural preferences, because again, going back to the content, to the curriculum of the program, thinking about cultural value dimensions, we have ways to explain how different cultures behave, right? And one of them is individualism versus collectivism. And the way that you explain it is it's very beautiful, because you're always saying we, right? We as community. So it is important for you to create connections, to create networks. It doesn't matter if they come from different areas, even if you're not familiar with them, but it is a collective effort, right?
Yes. So just to show a little bit of light on that, right, Andres? I would say this, I don't care like whether we're from like a privileged background or not, whether within our local society we are privileged or not, or maybe the part of the world that we find ourselves, we come from the privileged side or not. I would say one thing is that we are all interconnected. And that is one thing that the pandemic really brought out of the world. If something can affect America, it can affect a country like Liberia. If something can affect a country like Liberia, it can affect a great country like America, Canada, Brazil, China, and any other country for that matter, right? So it's the same way that I look at my community, my country, my society. If we have a problem, it is everybody's problem. And in order to have that resolved, we may need all hands on deck. And how we do that is by ensuring that we respect and value everybody's opinion to that matter, and how best we can find the best solution that suits it. Because the end of the day, what we want to do is to be able to resolve that problem. If we have human capacity gap, it shows that it is a problem not just for the ordinary citizen, but also for people in leadership. What happens when you are not around tomorrow? Because nobody can say, for instance, like, we're going to resist death or anything. If you cannot create the path today for the next generation, then there's going to be a problem tomorrow, because you have not prepared and you are not giving them the right resources, you're not giving them the right mentorship, nothing of such. So at the end of the day, there's a huge gap, and you're going to have a generation that is completely lost, and they cannot have anything to contribute, and it would lead us right back into chaos. And that's what I think is very important, to be able to value everybody and make sure that they are in the room and their voices are heard, and you can get the different views and concerns in the community. And with that, everybody can be able to come up with suggestions on how things are going to work, and you can agree upon it. And at the end of the day, you can find a common ground, and everybody can form a part of the process. So I think it's very, very important.
I would love to learn to speak the way that you speak about what you're passionate about, because you're really convincing, and you embody these skills, right? And that's one of the things that was really impressive for me being at the Youth Assembly, listening to you all, to delegates and ambassadors. And I remember that when I was at the booth of AFS, I met Ruth for the first time. And she was already mentioning, yeah, I took the program, I remember you, and you were already sharing with me what you learned, and wow, this was so relatable. And I was like, I'm not very used at other AFS events to see people that are so vocal and so comfortable at speaking and showcasing ideas and being passionate about something, and being comfortable with cameras and recording stuff and giving interviews and so on. So I was like, wow. And maybe when I met Ruth, for example, I was like, maybe I should interview these people. So maybe that's why we're here today. But I wanted to ask you all, and I know that you, Ruth, wanted to say something. What did you learn with the program? What was so interesting for you?
I think it was a surprise learning for me. It's like you've been experiencing things, things, but then you didn't know that it exists, it's a problem, or it's something that it's a solution, it's an issue, all of these things. So that was how it was like for me. And the fact that a lot of times I've been to dozens of leadership meetings, dozens of leadership trainings, and every time we talk about diversity, a leader should be a good communicator, a leader should be empathetic, a leader should be, should respect others' opinions, should, respect their team members, diverse opinions, and all of those things. I just feel like it has been like a brush over topic, it doesn't really get down deep to how it really is when it comes to leadership. We just talked about diversity, but with the global competence class, like, you go deep down into it, you listen to these different scenarios, and it's like, oh, I've experienced this before. I don't think I handle it better, or maybe I did. It gets you thinking. So every time we get to another module, it keeps you on your toes and thinking about, wait, was it a problem? Did I experience this before? Oh, I didn't know it was an issue. So every time I try to read and listen to these different modules and these very different scenarios, it just, popped a lot of different questions in, surprise, shock, and coming to the realization that this is it. So that was how the whole course was like for me. And I think, like, you, as an ambassadors, we are leaders. We encompass the word representation. So we are representing our country. But other than that, we go to the Youth Assembly for different reasons. But one of those reasons is networking, like Delton said, partnership for the goals. And if you want to achieve whatever aspect of the sustainable development goal that you are passionate about, you cannot rely on it just being passionate. These are topics, these are modules that you should know about to help you, get you deep dive into what it means to be a delegate, or what it means to be, passionate about youth empowerment, what it means to be passionate about education, youth being inclusive at the political processes in decision makings and all of these things. So everything pertaining to the sustainable development goal. That's why the last one is partnership for the goals, because if we want to partner, if we want to, connect with other people, we must be willing to accept them for who they are. We must be aware of ourselves and how we can engage people, because lobbying is part of the process, right? If you want to achieve this sustainable lobbying is part of the process. You must lobby, you must advocate, all of these different processes, all of these different actions that we take to make sure that our voices are being heard. It encompasses of all of those topics in the model. So I think that whenever we talk about leadership, or whenever we talk about youth being at the forefront, whenever we talk about, youth advocacy, we must also be willing to talk about self-awareness and how we can effectively push these messages out there. Because if we can't communicate in the right way, if we can't lobby, if we can use the opportunity given to us to leverage on those opportunities and create change, I don't think we can achieve what we want to achieve. So I think it encompasses of that.
Yeah, you mentioned many keywords: empathy, open-mindedness, self-awareness, right? Self-awareness is super important, because it's very easy to just go out there and say whatever you want to say and try to convince people. But I think it's important to understand, like we're doing right now, what do you want to do? What are the causes that you want to defend, and why do you want to defend them? Why is that important to you? How do you see yourself as a cultural being? How do you perceive yourself? What are your values? And then trying to understand what are other people's values and communication styles, and how do they see the world, right? To start a dialogue and then make the connections, right? How do we work together now, as Delton was saying? And Patricia, was there anything in particular that you learned from the program?
Yes, I just wanted to add, for me, the Global Competence Program was just a reminder of everyday life. All the topics that we talked about, we've all either experienced it, or we know someone that has, or we've been around during, people experiencing it. So for me, what I took from the program is, it's good reminder, because sometimes we go through this and we forget, or like Ruth mentioned, we may have acted a certain way, but perhaps it wasn't the right way. But the program was there to remind us that, hey, this is how you should be reacting. So it was a really excellent program. I do encourage a lot of people to take it, or everybody who's watching, please take it if you have the opportunity. It's not just a typical online course where somebody speaks and that's it. It's very important issues that are being raised, like everyday life. And for me, that program, it's something, that kind of reminded me, oh, this is what happened. This happened to you. This happened to your friend, So it was really, really encouraging. And also it's something that you can also, bring to the table with other people. You can discuss it. Like in Canada, we have a lot of diversity and inclusion discussions happening even in our workplaces. But the difference is, like, this program was more profound, I found. Like, it was more like we shared our personal stories, or we shared like something that we know happened to somebody. So I think it was very, very, very good to take, and a reminder of this is still happening in life and how we can continue to improve and still talk about all those issues.
Thank you, Patricia. When we talk about the program, we talk a lot about the exposure to diversity, right? And for some of us and many people, it can be harder or easier according to how exposed you are to diversity, how open you are to meet with different people. And Patricia, I learned a little bit about your background, and it was fascinating to read that you were born in Romania, you moved to Greece, your family comes from the DCR, right? And then you moved to Canada. So how was the experience of doing the program, but also being the Youth Assembly, carrying all that story that you carry?
It was good, you know, I guess through my international life journey, and also participating at the Youth Assembly and taking this program was kind of like a nice mix for me to identify my story, share my story with other people, and also at the same time, hopefully, you know, inspire other people to move forward in whatever career they want to do. I know we've briefly talked about the things we're passionate about. So I mentioned about a lot of things, youth in leadership, but my main theme is more youth in diplomacy. So I'd love to see more young people also in international affairs field, because that's my field of studies as well. And with that program, you know, with my life experience of moving across the country, the program made me realize that it's really also good to talk about the importance of diversity, because sometimes people feel like they need to travel to understand different cultures. And I would have to disagree with that, because you can understand different cultures by not even traveling, but by making friends from different cultures. You know, they can teach you about their culture, you can teach them about yours. So you don't have to live in 3-4 different countries like I did. Like, this program was really good, because maybe some people may think, oh, I need to be more international to understand this, but no, you can be a local, you can be born and raised in the US, live there your whole life, never been to Canada, for instance. So it's not a big deal, but the program is there for you to understand the importance of a lot of things. And that's how I felt about it. And that's why I really encourage people who are watching this to really, you know, take the program, attend the Youth Assembly. There's so much you will learn, and it's really eye-opening. And I could talk about this forever, but I won't. But that's all I want to say. Really, it's amazing.
Thank you for mentioning something so important. It is not necessary for anyone to travel everywhere and speak every language in order to be a global citizen, right? It's more about the values that you carry and how you use the skills and those attitudes, how you embody that, how you communicate with others, how do you start dialogues. So thank you, Patricia, for mentioning that. Delton, what was your main learning?
So I would say the entire global course was basically just about breaking the barrier of exclusion and opening your eyes to embracing inclusivity. So what I mean by that is that, and I throughout the class, I may have done so many diversity and culture courses, especially at my job, right? But I would tell you, this was the best among all that I've done in my entire life. I was not just reading from somebody that, oh, when you see this, you got to do this, you got to do that. Most of these matters and scenarios, there were time that it would pause and then give you questions to think about. Have you ever experienced this? Have you ever done this to a person before? Have you done this? And like, it's a whole time of thinking. And a lot of time myself, I felt guilty about some of the things, you know, and I also felt as a victim to some of what was said. So I feel like many times, like I said earlier, sometimes we just try to close our eyes and just focus on one aspect of how life is going without trying to figure out that we are also part of the problem. Okay. And that's why self-awareness is very important, because if you have courses like Global Orb, where you take the course, you have a personal reflection of your own lifestyle and how you have treated people over the time, and then you realize that you had shortcomings and work on these shortcomings and embrace other people, it also puts you in a position to build relationship with people and also share your own experiences with them. Like, for instance, what caused Delton to change from being somebody that maybe could not relate to so many people? I always tell people, like, personally, when I was growing up, I was an introvert. But at some point in my life, I don't know how things happen, but I just become an extrovert. So, but that's it. If I tell you today, like I sometimes I try to be an introvert, but it doesn't work, and I feel bad that it doesn't work right. But that's it. I can't do anything about it. So that's just it. It's a course that will teach you basically about your own thoughts and how you can relate to other people, how you can take the actions. Because if you want to create change in the world, the first change that you have to do is to change yourself. How can you begin with yourself? What are the little things that you're doing that are hurting the community, that is not helpful to other people? If you can treat other people with respect, if you can embrace their ideas and make them feel that they're worth it, and whatever they're saying can also make a meaningful impact or contribution to the conversations that you're having, then they feel a part of the process. And in that way, because you yourself, you really want to be say, making a contribution to something, and somebody cutting you short, right? Or shutting you up. So at the end of the day, if you see it that way, because I don't want this to be done to me, so I have to give somebody the chance or the opportunity for them to be able to make their voice heard. If we can live to that, if we can embrace each other, like Patricia rightly stated, you don't have to go to Canada, to Liberia, to Brazil, to be able to relate to people from there. But in your community today, you have people from these countries, either in your school, either in your church, in your mosque, in your social groups. How do you relate to these people? Do you embrace them? Do you try to have conversations with them and be able to learn about their background and their own experiences and their cultures? If you can do that, the day you travel to Brazil, to Canada, to Liberia, to China, any of these countries, you will already be ahead because you have learned something from these people, and you know basically like how their culture functions. So that's just my thought.
It's beautiful to hear, and you're already mentioning something that I wanted to ask you. What message could you send to other young people, not only delegates, but you just shared a beautiful message, and that's how I would like to end this conversation, by asking you if you could write on a post-it a little message for a young person like yourselves, or younger, that are looking after you and wanting to do something as cool as what you are doing right now, and thinking about the experience that you have been going through already. Delton just mentioned that it was one of the best experiences he ever had. So think about people like you, entrepreneurs, activists, students, or anyone passionate about peace building and justice and diplomacy. What message would you write for them?
So this is what I was saying. Most often we get carried away by our dreams and our goals, and sometimes we feel that we are way important than other people. Or sometimes we feel that because we are in privileged positions as young people, or we have certain linkage with people in authority in our local community, or just because of status in society, we don't try to affiliate with other young people. And for me, I don't think that's a very good behavior of a change maker, because if you want to be a change maker, you got to ask yourself, what do you want to change? It's a very important question, because just because you have a particular status in society doesn't necessarily mean that you are making change. Whose life are you changing? How are you changing their life, that individual's life? What impact or what decisions have you taken that that person has benefited? So as a young change maker, this is where I come in with inclusion. Because if you are all the way up here and you're not going to the man that is way down to understand his day-to-day activity and how he's living, how he's surviving, what his challenges are, you're not going to close the gap. You have to come from above and go all the way to his level and understand things from his level then you can be able to take the right decision. So I'd say this to mean that it is important to build partnership. It is important to always listen to people, regardless of who they are. And it's important to leave your arms open to everybody. When you do that, you learn a lot. When you do that, you build networks. Yes, you may be up to date, but that person who you're going to help to bring at your level, they might pass you and go above, and they can take you somewhere too. If we talk about the Barack Obama, if you talk about the Nelson Mandela, if you talk about Mahatma Gandhi's and all these people, they were once held by others and they became great, right? And they mentioned these people in their lifetime. So if you want to be great, you do that by lifting others, by making sure that they reach their goals, because that's why, as a young person, you're serving as an ambassador. That's why, as a young person, you're going to attend Global Up class. As a young person, you're being a delegate, or you're going to one day be a delegate to the Youth Assembly and other different youth platforms. Use those platforms, use your connection there, and build other people up. Do not create competition. Right now, we don't need competition in the youth community. All odds is against us. And I say this to mean that, right now we're talking about youth in leadership, youth in this, youth in that. And we have a huge youthful population across the world. And how we're going to get there is when we have a united voice. And how that happens, how we earn people trust, is when we embrace them and we create a platform for them to build their own skills and also be heard. So that's my final word.
Self-awareness, right? Understanding and asking yourself questions like you are doing yourself. Like, what do you want to change? Why? How is that going to benefit someone? And again, Delton is such a collectivist person, right? There's partnerships, network, collaborating, listening to others, no matter who they are, where they come from. Ruth or Patricia, any messages that you would like to share with people who are listening to us?
Yes, the first quote actually that comes to my mind, after we discuss this is by Mahatma Gandhi, where he says, "Be the change you want to see in the world." So I think the young people need to be that change they want to see in the world. My message to all the young people watching this, just keep moving forward. There will be obstacles, there will be challenges, but again, don't let that stop you. Don't let that make you give up, and you're never too small to achieve big things. This is the message that I like to share with everyone.
So I think I kind of agree with what my two colleagues said, and especially in terms of self-awareness. I also think, we have moved past the conversation where people are doubting if young people can actually create change, because we have seen it. It has become evident enough that, a lot of young people out there are making change and all of those things. So I think the conversation have moved past that. It's now about, equal access to these opportunities. So my message to young people is, until you get there, you have to be prepared, because we're fighting, we are on the front line, fighting, advocating for other young people who are down in the rural areas, who are down in the trenches, to have some of these opportunities, to have some of these platforms that we have available to us. Yes, but we didn't have such a platform. But what kept us going is the fact that when you have a burning zest in you to do something, you don't have to wait for opportunities to knock on your door. You have to be ready, because whenever a door opens, then you are ready. So I think young people should make use out of the internet. And for those who cannot have internet available because of where they are, I think what they can also do is look at other people who are at the forefront, try to not necessarily be like them, but capture some traits, some values that you think resonate with your cause, with your quest for change. I think you can walk in their footprints. research, make yourself aware of things that are happening within your community, make aware of things that are happening within the larger society. When you're constantly, researching, when you're constantly learning about these things, through different forms, through different ways, whenever you have an opportunity afforded to you, or whenever you manage to see one, you are like already there, like that you've been waiting for this moment, and you can explode easily. And that's how I do think, because I feel like if we're advocating for youth inclusion and youth participation, I also think that we should also constantly be aware of these different traits, these different leadership, because that will help us. We can advocate as long as we want to, but what will sustain us when we get this opportunity to be there and to progress is what we do with ourselves, like our self-awareness, how we're educating ourselves, how we're making connections, how we are networking with other people. So I think my message is be ready. That's my message to young people.
It's a hard work, being a really hardworking person, starting with yourself, right? And I can get from this last round a couple of things, like ask questions to yourself, right? Don't be afraid, be brave. You don't have to imitate someone else, right? You just need to capture some of the values that you see on others, study a lot, educate a lot, do research, and so on. So I would like to thank you so much for giving me a little bit of your time, for giving me the chance to be part of your journeys. And I think it's beautiful. What you're doing is extremely inspiring. And I would like to see you at the Youth Assembly next year. So thank you so much. Today I was joined by Patricia Kumbakisaka, Ruth Farkollie, and Delton Domah, 3 amazing ambassadors that were part of the 27th Youth Assembly organized by AFS in New York City. And if you want to come to the next Youth Assembly and meet these 3 people and all the other delegates and ambassadors, please feel free to do it. We'll be happy to have you. The next cohort of the Global Up is going to start on September 12th, and it goes to October 23rd. We're going to have some amazing facilitators, like the one that you had last time you did it. I'm going to be one of the facilitators as well, and we're going to join 4 times in 4 different live sessions. So if you're curious to learn more, please look at the website, look at the description of this video. If you want to connect with Patricia, Ruth, or Delton, you will see their information in the description of this conversation. So again, thank you so much, you 3, and I hope to see you soon.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us. It was a wonderful time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.